Welcome to another interview series to find out what happened in the 80s, 1980s, primarily during that time when not so many new dancers came back into the swing dance scene. My name is Eva W. Burek. Today is August 9th, 2023, and I'm here together with Lennart Westerlund in Stockholm, Sweden. Hey Lennart, welcome.
Yeah, good morning I should say, because it's 10 o'clock in the morning also.
Yes, it's good to see you again.
Thank you, and good to see you.
Thank you. I'm gonna read a little intro here.
Okay.
Let's see. Among other things, Lennart is dancer, performer, instructor, organizer, appreciated speaker, and writer. He's also a collector of a lot of clips, dance, and movies. He's a founding member of the performance troupe The Rhythm Hot Shots, and for the last 30 plus years, Lennart was one of the main organizers at Herräng Dance Camp, the big festival in Sweden. Lennart has been instrumental when it comes to putting more life into the Lindy Hop, both in Sweden and internationally. And you are my former professional dance partner, even if we do work together from time to time, also today. So Lennart, when you hear this list, what would you add to that when it comes to Lindy Hop for you?
Oi, that's a tricky question. You said a lot of things, and I think it's true what you touched here. I mean, it all started out that I was interested in this particular type of dancing because I came across it with books and films and so on more than 40 years ago now. But it led to, as you touched, it was about to learn more about the dance, and that led to that you started to dig into a lot of things, and that includes to organize things, to write things. I made some film documentaries. It was kind of the whole package. I did whatever I felt was good for the dance and that I liked to do. So it was a combination of those. And since I guess I spent more or less 100% of my awake time for many, many years, I could kind of do many aspects of the dance. But the main thing was always to try to learn more and to be a performer in the group, the Rhythm Hot Shots. Mm-hmm. But Herräng Dance Camp became an important part from the late 80s, especially for me, and into the 90s and so on. Mm-hmm. But it's been a lot of stuff going on over the years. Definitely, and I am a little bit of a collector of stuff too, which means also books and pictures and all that stuff.
Yeah, you've been very, very dedicated. Mm-hmm. What was it about the Lindy Hop which part did you fall in love with from the beginning?
I mean, from the beginning, I had a little bit of an interest back in the 70s for dancing, but where I lived, which was a smaller town in Sweden called Westerlund, there were not many opportunities at all to learn how to dance. I did a little folk dancing, some foxtrot, some Swedish Bugg. I felt that I did reasonably well with those dances. So in 1979 I decided to move to Stockholm, and I came here in January 1980. And that led to that I started to take a lot of dance classes of different kinds. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I was interested in it. And I ended up doing a lot of what was called Jitterbug dancing here in Stockholm. And it was related to 1950s type of music. And I social danced, I competed a little bit, and we were a lot of young people that had a very good time together. But then something happened, and it is connected to a guy that we might talk more about a little bit later on. His name is Anders Lind. He came to the club that I was a member of, Swedish Swing Society. They still exist, and they have been around since the late 70s. So he showed up there, and he started to do some, we can call it investigations on his own. And one day, this is probably 1983, I'm not sure, but probably 1983, he showed up with a book that I happen to have with me here. It looks like this.
Wow, jazz dance.
Now you've seen this one before, I guess. This is the old cover of it, the original cover. Now it looks different. But he showed up with this book that he had found at the Stockholm Dance Museum. And in this book you can read a lot about the true history of the dance, which goes back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, that period of time. And it was related to two things that we didn't know anything about at the time. It was related to African American culture, and it was related to jazz and swing music. We had no know-how, understanding that the dance was that old and that it actually was related to jazz music. So this led to a completely new perspective. And when this book came around and we saw a few film clips, that is the moment when I felt I have to somehow dig deeper into this and see what I can do with it.
So it was the combination of the book and seeing the book come alive in the film clips and with the dance.
Oh yeah. So before that it was only a hobby. I had no ambitions more than to have it as a hobby. But when the book came around, Anders came around, he was very enthusiastic and inspiring to hang around with, and we happened to see, and this is early 1984, we saw A Day at the Races and we saw Hälsa Poppin. And after seeing those two movies, I guess we both felt that we have to do something serious with this dance. We didn't know what serious meant, but it first of all meant that we felt we have to go to the source, which means New York City. We have to travel there and see if we can find any of these people that we have read about in the book, and maybe even that we had seen in some of the film clips that we had access to.
So was it just, did you have a vision where that would take you, like, oh, we could create something? Was it just the curiosity and the passion for it, and you just went without having a clear goal with doing that?
Yeah, that was just, we were excited. I would say close to obsessed already. So it took over our lives. And at this time, I would say it was Anders, it was myself, and then Catherine Ljunggren was gradually introduced to this because she was my dance partner since a few years already. But primarily it was something between Anders and me. So when we decided to buy the trip to New York, we were just excited. We didn't know what we should do with this material that we hopefully were about to find in New York. We just went there and said, let's see what we can do here. And that was for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, that first trip. I wonder if we will come back to New York. I'm excited to hear how that was. Maybe we should go back a little bit to see what the landscape was when in Stockholm at the time. What was prior to that, you know, what when it comes to jazz music in Stockholm leading up to the 80s. What would you say about that? I mean, just to paint a backdrop a little bit.
Yeah, I can't say so much about jazz music at the time because, as I said before, when I came into Jitterbug dancing, it was not related to jazz music. It was related to 50s music, and 99% of the time it was recorded music from the 50s or early 60s. We didn't have any live bands normally playing that type of music. But we have to remember in the late 70s in Sweden, there was a little bit of a craze for 50s music. It was somehow related to that Elvis Presley passed away in 77. When he died, there was a kind of return of rock and roll music. People started to listen to his music and also the music that he especially played in the 50s. And younger people at that time in Sweden, not in Västervik where I lived necessarily, but in other places, they started to try to find out how do you dance to this music. So some dance schools here in Stockholm and elderly dance teachers that had been around in the 50s, they started to teach what was called Swedish Bugg or Jitterbug. They used different terms. Some people said even rock and roll. So it was a little bit of a confusion which word to use, but I believe that Jitterbug was the most spread one. And then a lot of young people came into the dance. So when I came in, it was already an established scene for this type of dancing, which was basically a 6-count kind of jive-ish kind of thing, quite hard in a way compared to the Lindy Hop somehow. Anyway, we stepped into that, and that was the beginning of it all. And it wasn't until Anders came around in 83 that we started to pay attention to jazz music. So I can't say that I know too much about the music itself at that time. I do remember, however, that there was a place in Stockholm, Bal Palais. They had big band music and dance played on, I believe it was Saturdays, and I went there with one of the key members of Swedish Swing Society. His name was Peter Strandell. So me and him, we went there sometimes, but I don't think we danced. We sat there listening because we liked that music somehow, but we never fully understood that that was the music that originally was the foundation for Jitterbug, Lindy Hop, and so on. So people dancing there, it was not Lindy dancers, it was foxtrot dancers. It was elderly people dancing more, in tight positions. And I can't remember that we saw anyone opening up the dance. So that was the only introduction I had to jazz music before Anders came in, because that led to that I started to listen to jazz music, specifically bands that had played in Harlem back in the days, African American bands. My first love was Jimmy Lanseford's band. And then of course we listened to Swedish jazz musicians. We went to places and started gradually to touch, to dance with them all, to dance to that particular type of music when we had understood a little bit more.
And did you come across, I'm going to do this because now it got a little bit dark here, it's very rainy today.
You can put it on top of the lamp there.
Okay, I'll do
you
this.
Lift it up a little bit and you turn the lamp a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
Okay.
Get a little bit more light in it.
Yeah.
So when you went out to these places, did you have a chance to dance with some old-timers, people that, had more experience from that time? Or no, you stayed in your little clique?
Yeah, I can't remember that we really met any elderly Swedish jitterbug dancers, swing dancers. I don't think they were around really. Over the years we did meet some of them, but that was more when we were starting to look for them. They didn't come out as far as I remember dancing. It was it was younger people. It was people between 20 and 25 mainly.
Good. Okay, that gives us a little bit understanding what happened before. So let's go to New York.
Oui.
So here you are, super excited. You found the book and you have some clips, and it's 1984.
Yeah.
So it's yourself, it's Anders Lind, and it's Henning Sørensen.
Yes, it's the three of us, and we were all members of this Swedish Swing Society, which was kind of the main club for jitterbug dancing in Stockholm at the time. And that was connected to a famous Swedish dancer choreographer named Lasse Kühler.
Lasse Kühler, yes.
So we came there, and this is late May 1984. We flew with Iceland Air. We had one night in Reykjavik, and then we came to New York. We landed at John F. Kennedy Airport. We took the subway to Manhattan, and none of us had been in the US before. And I remember when we came up from the subway, we came up right in the middle, very close to Times Square, which is a very central location at Manhattan. And when we came up, we just saw these enormous skyscrapers. And Sweden don't have those kind of buildings. And it was so many of them, and it was raining a little bit. And everything was shiny, and it was wet. And we just looked up at these skyscrapers, and then we understood, oh my God, we are somewhere else than in Stockholm. It was a very strong impression, just coming there and just looking at this. And of course, we were full of energy to step into our mission to find out what is left of the Lindy Hop. So we walked over a few blocks to our pre-booked hotel. Times Square Motor Hotel. It doesn't exist any longer, but the building is there, very close to Times Square. A very cheap hotel. We came to the reception, and from the beginning we had a feeling it's very few tourists here. We looked around a little bit. We were really newcomers in New York. We checked in, and I think we had a room on the 14th floor. We stayed in the same room, the three of us. And it was obvious to us, being in the elevator, I remember that there were some other people there. And it felt to us that it was people more, what do you say in English, that they had problems in life. And it was people that were very drunk, things like that. There were women that we saw that we felt they must be prostitutes or something. It was a little bit of it was not a hotel feeling. And it also showed to be a very alternative type of hotel. But we had booked ourselves there. We came to the room, we opened the door, put on the light, and suddenly we saw a lot of small animals running on the floor. It was a thick carpet, and there were things moving on the carpet. And those things, we had probably never, none of us, seen those type of animals. And I think we all know that it's when I'm talking about cockroaches.
Yeah, it's so funny that you call the little creatures animals. That's so nice.
Yeah, yes, I guess they are animals. But anyway, that was new to us. The environment we came from didn't have any cockroaches. So they were running all over the place. And we realized after a while that they had small holes, openings in the walls, or small places where they could hide. And they didn't like the light. So they ran off, and suddenly most of them were kind of gone. The room was very dark, and it wasn't really a hotel room the way you would like a hotel room to be. It was low budget.
But you decided to stay there?
Yeah. It became a part of a cultural experience of some kind. So we stayed together with the cockroaches for a little bit more than 3 weeks.
Wow.
That was exciting.
Yeah. I guess it elevated the experience of the whole trip.
When I think back of it, I never would have liked to live in a more luxury hotel. This is a piece of the experience of coming to New York at the time. And I think it added to the feeling of that everything is different here. Everything. For good or for worse. Whatever.
And it makes you remember the trip.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of memories, and I could tell more about that hotel, but we leave that for now.
Yeah. So did you have like a list of things to do there? Where do you start your adventure here? Where did you have a plan? Or did you improvise?
Anders had a plan.
Yeah.
Anders was extremely organized and structured. He was the way I looked upon him at the time was that he was like a scientist. He stepped into this, and then he started to very methodically think, organize things, make plans. And me and Henning, when we came to New York, I would call us to the assistants to Anders. Anders was the one saying, now we do this, and now we can do this. And we should go here because I have read. I don't even know where he got the information from. But we have to remember this is way before computers and stuff. So you couldn't just go to the computer and ask a lot of questions. You had to find out somehow. So he was the leader of the trip, and we were following very much in his footsteps.
And at this point, you didn't have any other contacts with other people in other places who had done something. It was like you were.
We knew the Stockholm scene. That was it. We didn't know anything about New York. We had read the book that I showed before, and there were a few names mentioned frequently in the book when we read the chapters about the Savoy Ballroom and Lindy Hop. And it was Al Mintz, and Leon James. And those were the only names we really had. So in our heads, in Anders' head especially, we wanted to try to find those two if possible.
Did you have any interest to go and social dance, to find some dancers in New York? Did you do any of that? Or it was...
I think we were open for whatever we could find at the time, because we wanted to sum up what is left of this culture. But the primary thing was, of course, to find the veteran dancers, the old-timers, to find them if they were still around. Because it was their dancing we were specifically interested in. If we found young people doing it, that would have been okay also, of course, but it was the old-timers we were looking for.
So how did it go?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but we started very quickly to make phone calls to dance schools. In those days, people had telephone books, which was thick things where you could start to try to find people. So we started to call dance schools, and my memory is that we started more or less alphabetically. And we soon came to the letter C, and we called the dance studio run by Sandra Cameron Dance Studio or Dance Center. I don't remember how she named the studio. But we called there, and basically the questions we had asked other dance schools without any information, it was, do you know anything about swing dancing, Lindy Hop and Albert Mintz, Leon James? And then they said, we have a teacher here. He's an elderly African American. His name is Albert Mintz. And then, of course, we said, we want to meet Mr. Mintz. Where can we meet him? Mm-hmm. So something like that. They were very helpful at the school. I don't know who we spoke to. Could have been Larry Schultz, the husband of Sandra, because he was very much involved in the dance school also. So we got some information there, and a few days later, the person at Sandra Cameron's studio had told us that there was a memorial concert for Count Basie that had passed a few months before we came. So his band was, they were playing at a place called the Red Parrot, which was more like a discotheque nightclub something. But for this particular occasion, the Count Basie band were there, and we were told from the dance school that most likely Mr. Mintz would show up at the dance. Mm-hmm. So without knowing much more than that, we got our tickets and we came to the evening with the Count Basie band and hopefully Mr. Mintz also. Mm-hmm. So that was an exciting night because it was the first night we were exposed to the dance somehow in a social setting. Mm-hmm. There was also a performance that night with Norma Miller jazz dancers, mm-hmm. including Chaz Young that we later on learned to know very well. So there were 6 dancers and they did some Lindy Hop and some solo jazz dancing. Chaz did a fantastic tap number. Norma was kind of emceeing it and she danced a little bit too, but she was mainly emceeing it. And then at one point she also brought 3 of her dance colleagues from the Savoy Ballroom back in the 30s up on stage. Mm-hmm. And that was Frankie Manning, Billy Ricker and Albert Mintz. So those 3 came out of the audience and we stood there looking at this, not knowing who Frankie was or who Billy was, but Al we knew because of the book. And she danced a little bit socially with each and every one of them, which was kind of maybe the end of the show or something. So then we just mingled around and finally someone, probably from the Sandra Cameron Dance Studio, introduced us to Mr. Mintz, and we had a brief conversation with him that led to that we made some kind of appointment to meet him later on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that was kind of the beginning of it, being in a live setting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How did they respond to you being there? Was it...
do you mean the dance studio?
No, Norma and her dancers, and they were like, was it a big deal? Or was like, yeah.
No, I don't think they paid much attention to us. And me and Henning, we were definitely quite discreet, maybe even shy in a way. Anders was a little bit more forward. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he spoke to any of the other dancers in any way. I don't remember. I didn't speak to them, but I was introduced to some of them. But unfortunately, I don't even know who I was introduced to. Mm-hmm. Our focus was so much on Al at the time, so I don't think we recognized the other ones really, and we didn't know their backgrounds. Mm-hmm. But Al, since we had the opportunity to meet him a few days later, and we interviewed him, but also just asked a lot of questions, socialized with him and so on, he was a little bit impressed somehow that we had traveled all the way from Sweden to New York and kind of specifically looking for him. Because of course we told about the book we had read and that we had read about him, and we came there to find him or Leon James, but Al told us that Leon had passed about 10 years before we came there. So at that time we understood that Al is the man that we should hang out with as much as possible. We started to come to some of his classes. I don't think we joined in. We sat there looking at his classes, and we were trying to spend as much time as he wanted to give us. But besides that, we also started with other projects that were in the direction of finding out more about the Lindy Hop. But Al was in the center of our activities already.
How big was the interest around Al at that time in New York? And how was his classes well attended? And could you feel that, was he very established at the dance school? And
I mean, he was established since a few years at the dance school, but my memory is that the classes were not very big. I would assume he had been also coaching some of the other teachers at the studio, including Paul Grecki especially. So I believe that Al had Lindy classes, but I think Paul, together with partner, I don't know who, also had Lindy classes. Al was the main teacher, but I think other people had stepped in also trying to help out with some more classes. But I didn't, at the time, I never saw a lot of people doing the Lindy. It was small groups, and they were related to Sandra Cameron's studio. But then you had also, of course, the elderly African Americans. They did the dance, and some of them had danced all through the 60s and 70s and so on, when the dance was not that popular. But they continued to dance, so they were, of course, also out there from time to time, social dancing. But we never fully got in contact with any other person than Albert Mintz from the older generation at the time. He was our gold nugget, more or less.
So how much during those 3 weeks did you see him? How much did you see him? How much time did you spend with him?
Oh, that's hard to say. But we saw him at classes, we saw him privately, and we saw him at social dances. We spoke about that maybe we could come and visit him where he lived, but he kind of said that, nah, I don't think you should come here, it's not the nicest area, so it's better I come downtown. So we never came to his home.
How would you describe him as a person?
Very generous, very soft, nice. He found us probably both a little bit weird, because Anders especially, he could ask the most detailed and specific questions that probably...
Like what? What would Anders ask?
No, but it could be that he started... Anders was very, very analytical. I said before he was a little bit like a scientist in a way. So he could move into the molecules of the dance. And I don't think Al ever had been thinking of the dance or the music in terms of that. So I remember that Al sometimes just shook his head and said, I can't answer that. I don't know how I should talk about that. And you know, we were counting everything. Al couldn't count. He was not a counter. So when we started to talk in terms of numbers and things like that, I don't think he could follow us very well. He was music, and we were some basic theory around everything. So it was like we came from so different backgrounds. So that was probably a little bit problematic for Al to deal with us that way. But at the same time, I said, maybe he looked upon us as a little bit of weirdos, but he was also very flattered. He was flattered that we had come all the way, that we had this interest that we had, because we had to remember there wasn't a lot of students at Sandra Cameron doing Lindy. And the students there, they were I can't remember any black person. It was white people, white middle-aged people, I would say, something downtown Manhattan type of people. And Al also said there seemed to be no interest from younger African Americans to learn this dance. So he was very pessimistic around that black people should come into the dance again. So I think he felt somehow inspired that his students were at the studio, that we came because we were probably much more enthusiastic than his general students at the Sandra Cameron studio. And also we were quite young at the time, younger than the average student at the studio. So I think he felt some kind of inspiration. And then, of course, when we finally asked him if he would like to come to Stockholm, I think he said yes immediately. And he said, yeah, he was very happy, I think. Very happy that someone paid that kind of attention to him, that probably very few people had done in a long time.
I'm thinking, so you had some dance experience and you've been reading before you got to New York. What did the experience of New York that first time bring in? What was the ingredients that experience brought into understanding of the culture and the dance as a whole? Is it anything that comes to mind?
The impression was overwhelming, completely overwhelming at the time. We wanted to spend time in Harlem also. And we didn't know much about Harlem really. We had read in the books. And when I grew up in Sweden, if Harlem was mentioned, and now we are talking about the later part of the 60s into the 70s, for a Swedish person, I think we saw it as a ghetto with drugs, criminality, problems. That was the picture we had. Then that picture was very much contradicted in the book Jazz Dance, and we read that Harlem had been like a cultural center for black culture back in the days. So we had two very different pictures of Harlem coming there. But since we had information where the Savoy had been, where the Cotton Club had been, where other ballrooms had been, we wanted to go to Harlem. And I very well remember, especially the first time we decided to go there, we didn't know what to expect really. We had tourist maps, but believe it or not, the tourist maps, they stopped at 110th Street, where Harlem starts. Later on, we were thinking about that, and we felt that maybe they don't want tourists to go there. Because it was very weird. A Manhattan map, and it stopped when there was a lot left of Manhattan. Anyway, so we took a subway or bus, I don't remember. We came to 110th Street. We walked next to Central Park, and then we saw 110th Street and Lenox Avenue. And we knew that Lenox Avenue, that is the avenue where the Savoy was back in the days. But we were at 110th, and Savoy had been at 141st. Okay, there were 30 blocks to walk. Yeah, we looked, it was a very straight street, avenue. It was wide, it was sidewalks. So we said, okay, let's go to the Savoy. We knew it was gone, but we wanted to go there. So we started to walk. We walked on the right side of the street, on the sidewalk. And it was very obvious after a few blocks that it was a lot of people that paid attention to us. We didn't see any white people really. We saw a lot of African Americans. And I remember also that we were dressed in very bright white kind of colors. So we were, when I think of it, I see the three of us as lamps, more or less. We were white kind of, not only skin-wise, but also how we dressed. And we stood out, most likely we stood out very much walking there.
Was it uncomfortable?
After a few blocks, I think we felt that, I wonder if we will make it for 30 blocks. It was people, they shouted a little bit. Harlem is a loud culture. You mean, black culture, I believe, is louder than traditional white culture. So people were shouting a little bit, asking, who are you, and blah, 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 what are you doing in Harlem? And some people started to walk next to us, which of course was stressful. They spoke not unfriendly, but it was a little bit with New York accent, slang. We had our school book English. Everything was a little bit uncomfortable. So after, I remember clearly, after 6 blocks, 116th, me and Henning, I don't know about Anders. He probably would have continued. He was tougher than
That's
me.
where Anders disappeared, right? We haven't seen him since. That's correct.
No, it wasn't that bad. Me and Henning, I believe that we felt clearly that this is not the best of ideas. So we turned right on 116th, and Anders came with us. And then we kind of took another avenue street when we came to one, and we walked in the direction of downtown again. So we never made it more than 6 blocks the first time. But we got a feeling for Harlem at the same time. But then it's the 80s Harlem, not the 30s Harlem, which was what we were interested in. But we got a touch of, okay, this is what Harlem is today. But later on, we made new attempts. Of course, it didn't mean that we gave up. But then we more took the subway or the bus leading to the area where something was. So we avoided to walk as much in the streets as we did in the beginning.
Wow.
We would have liked to walk, but it was a little bit uncomfortable, yes.
I appreciate your good memory for details. I guess that happens when it makes a strong impression again.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It was the most exciting thing I've done so far in my life.
Sure.
And even if I look back upon it today, that trip, it was such an eye opener for many things, and it was so exciting. I came from a very low key Swedish background, very silent, peaceful, old school. And to come to New York, which is like a melting pot for everything, and coming to Harlem and meeting Albert Mins, this hotel, many, many other things, it was overwhelming, and we all got very inspired, very, very inspired from the whole trip. So if I would point out a couple of moments in my life that have meant something, this trip would definitely be in the package. Oh yeah. And this was the period before a lot of people did the Lindy Hop. Now you can do the Lindy Hop more or less everywhere in the world. But remember, we felt like pioneers in a way, looking for the dance. And it was a very inspiring feeling to feel like a pioneer we felt like maybe we could be the ambassadors to bring this thing back to life again. Somehow, we didn't know in what form. Primarily, we wanted to learn it ourselves, but most likely we were open for everything that had something to do with this. Our goal was not fully set. It was only about what is left of this. What can we do? What can we learn? That was kind of what was in the package, I think.
So coming back from New York, was that when you formed the group, or rather when you talked to Almins in New York, did you invite him then? You have to come to Sweden, or please come to Sweden. Did that happen at that, or did you call him later to invite him in?
No. I mean, the agreement was kind of made in New York already. So it was, in the background was this club that we were a member of, Swedish Swing Society. They had sponsored our trip with 1,000 Swedish kronor each. I assume our expenses were more 15,000 Swedish kronor, but Swedish Swing Society gave 1,000 to us each because they had an interest. We had kind of introduced the dance in a way in Sweden before we left, meaning talking about it, and we even succeeded to rent Hälsa Poppin. This is before VHS were existing, but we couldn't find Hälsa Poppin. So in Sweden, Stockholm, I think it must have been only a few weeks before we went to New York, we were able to rent big wheels, film, machine, a guy running the machine to show Hälsa Pop in the dance sequence for the members of Swedish Swing Society. Mm-hmm. And some of them got a little bit inspired from this. Some of them thought it was, what is this? Mm-hmm. But we got our 1,000 Swedish kroner. And we asked Al to come to Sweden, and we knew that Swedish Swing Society would organize for him. Mm-hmm. So he showed up in late September the same year, and he stayed for, I say, 5 weeks.
So still 84, and it's the fall then.
Yeah, it's the fall. And Al moved in with a friend of mine, Bengt Bergman. Bengt lived in Årsta, outside of Stockholm, we can call it a suburb, but it's very, very close to Stockholm. 40s kind of architecture. Bengt had an apartment, 2 rooms and a kitchen, and for 5 weeks Mr. Mintz and Mr. Bergman shared that apartment, and they became very good friends somehow, because of course Bengt, he was the one that had much more time with Al than any of the rest of us. And Al had a tough schedule here. He was teaching, we had like we can call it an elite group. We were not much of an elite, but a group that was chosen by the members a little bit inside Swedish swing societies. It was mainly those that were successful in competitions. They practiced with Al Monday to Friday every week, 5 times a week. And on weekends, Al had classes for other people interested. And then it was not only people from Stockholm, it was also people from other places. So Al had a busy schedule here. There were probably a few free days here and there, but he worked most days of the week for those 4 or 5 weeks that he stayed. So that was exciting stuff, and that was the first time he really started to show us from scratch, everything from the beginning. So he started with 8 counts, swing outs, 6 counts, of course. He did jig walks. He showed the basic routines from that time, stops routine, the California, shim sham shimmy. So when he left, we had a kind of good basic vocabulary of stuff that was linked to the Lindy Hop. He also did some tap, because he could tap. I don't think he would have said that he was a tap dancer really, but he could definitely tap. So I remember, especially my dance partner at the time, Catherine Ljunggren, she stood there practicing with that because she had a background with tap. The rest of us, we didn't know much about tap, I think.
When I stepped in a little later, it was always, I understood that he made such an impression during his visit, but I don't think I understood until now how much time he put in to share his knowledge.
He did.
Was it also sitting around a table and talking about the things around outside the dance floor?
Of course, especially I would guess Anders was trying to continue to ask all his detailed questions.
Poor Al. Did he say anything? Was it like, okay, enough already? Or he just, he was working hard and I can see it was fun to be around people who had this, passion for it again. But still.
In general, I think he felt very inspired. Very inspired. There were probably moments when he felt that we were too ambitious asking questions and stuff. And primarily, I would say it was Anders. He was more brave than most of us. And he knew that it was important to get the information somehow. If we should continue to try to do something, it was important to get the information from Al. And many of the members of Swedish Swing Society at the time, they knew more or less nothing around the history or the background or anything. And I think that led to that they didn't find it so easy to ask these questions. Anders knew more than anyone else at the time. So he was in the forefront. So without him, he found the book. he was the one pushing for this trip to New York, blah, blah, blah. Without Anders, Sweden would have been delayed with the Lindy Hop. Anders was completely instrumental at the time. And then, as I said before, myself and a few other people ended up following in his footsteps and being as inspired as he was, I think. But he was definitely the leader of everything at this time.
Yeah, Anders was definitely.
He was your dance partner for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I remember that passion. He saw a little detail and he went for that, and he stayed with it and really went into the little corners of things and kind of examined it and went as far as he could. If it was a rhythm or if it was this, or he just he was very very focused. I mean, and passionate.
He is probably the first person here in Sweden that spoke in terms of rhythms. The rest of us, I mean, we could count somehow, some of us, but we didn't know anything about the music. We didn't know what a chorus was. We didn't know anything. I even remember that the Swedish Swing Society, including myself, probably not Anders, we did a performance with a jazz band, and this must have been in 84 maybe. And we came to this place. It was a restaurant. Nowadays it's Hard Rock Cafe in Stockholm, but at that time it was Metropole, which was an old school restaurant, you know, with white tablecloths and the servants in white jackets and black trousers. It had been a hangout for homosexuals in Stockholm back in the 30s, 40s, when it was still illegal to be homosexual. So it had a reputation, but at this time it was more like a restaurant, and it had jazz sometimes. And we had somehow gotten in contact with them or with the band. It was Al Sandström band. And we came there, we're going to do one Lindy Jitterbug number. And then there was a conversation between the band leader and the dancers. And when I think of it, it's so unbelievable to think how little we knew. Because I assume he said something like, oh, what tempo do you want and how long should the song be? We figured out something with the tempo. And then, believe it or not, the length, the couples, let's say we were 3-4 couples. One couple said, my solo is about 30 seconds long and my solo is 40 seconds. No, mine is only 25. And that was the reference we had to things. It was not how many bars or how many choruses. It was my solo is this and that many seconds. And how could this poor band leader understand what length is that? So I don't know how to say it in English, but we knew nothing. But Anders, he started to talk in terms of music. He started to understand the basics, and that was an eye-opener in combination with when Al was here, because Al didn't count the material. He was humming rhythms, and we said, is this number 2? And Al, he said, I don't know. I don't know what number 2 is. So
when he was teaching,
was the landscape.
So for him teaching in New York, he didn't count there either. He passed it on in the way he danced it, and
I mean,
the numbers weren't around over there.
I don't know if he ever learned to count. I have no memory hearing him counting in Sweden. No.
Yeah. Okay, so, and I've seen clips from Swedish television where Al was interviewed.
Yeah.
Was that,
Oh, he was happy for that.
He was?
Yeah.
Was special?
Because we said, Swedish TV is coming, they're going to film you and talk to you.
Yeah.
And of course, he had not had that kind of attention for many years. He had been in a few small New York productions that Larry Schultz, Sandra Cameron's husband, had produced, because he was like a TV movie producer. So he had done some work with some of the old-timers. But in general terms, there had not been much of an interest, I believe, for the last 10, 20 years, whatever. So when we said, Swedish television is coming, I think that was big for Al. It was big for us too. So
it's a wonderful clip.
Is it?
Yeah, it's so. How do you say? It's.
You mean when we are dancing or when he's dancing?
Well, I think about it as one clip. Maybe it's
yeah.
more than one. But you guys in the background, and he's dancing with Lena up front, I think, yeah, very much from its time capsule there. So Al goes back, and you are left alone with all this materials. You have the group that saw him a lot, and then you had more people in the outskirt a little bit that had a chance to work with him. You're super excited, I bet, you know.
Yeah,
when
we
he's
were.
leaving. What happened after that?
It was a little bit of a disappointment what happened afterwards.
Yeah?
Because
so?
me and Anders and a few more people, we were of course completely convinced that all people in Swedish Swing Society would understand how much better this is than what we had done before. But that was not the case. Instead, many of the most recognized Stockholm dancers at the time, those that won most of the competitions, they just took some of the steps from what Al had taught and they put it together with what they had done for 3, 4, 5 years before, the old Jitterbug dancing to rock and roll music. So for me and Anders, it was, we were extremely disappointed. So we started to work even more intensely together. Me and him, I guess Catherine was there. Anders, he had probably started to work together with Lena Ramberg at this time. So the four of us started to work together, and we became more and more not excluded from, we became more and more secret around things. Because Anders especially, I think I was on the same page. We felt so disappointed with the others, so whatever work we did, we didn't want to show them what we were doing. We started to practice on our own, and if some of the other members came down, we kind of stopped practicing because we didn't want to show them anything that we had learned, because we stood with the old movies. So we had VHS cassettes, we had a handful of clips, and we stood there patiently trying to recreate things from the movies. And we didn't want to give that away for free because we felt they have not been respectful to what Al passed on, and they couldn't see the beauty of it. We didn't. I remember we used a Swedish term. We didn't want to throw any pearls to the pigs. That was the term we used.
Pärlor till svinen.
Pärlor till svinen. So it became a little bit of a split inside Swedish Swing Society because of this.
Sounds like you were very protective.
We were.
Of what he had passed on.
Yeah, we would have liked to share it, but when they showed this disrespect to the material and the music and the idea of it, then we lost the inspiration to pass on. We felt we are going to do it, the four of us, and then we'll see what happens.
Okay, and still at that point you closing the door, so it sounds like you not really start to look outside yet. Who else is interested outside of the border of Sweden? It's none of that yet. It's just the four of you digging even deeper into the material you have.
I mean, we kept some contact with Al, not on a frequent level, but there were a few letters sent and so on.
Yeah.
I don't know if we spoke to him over the phone. I don't remember, but we were definitely trying to keep the contact alive, because the plan was to bring him back to Sweden summer of 85. Herräng Dance Camp, it wasn't called Herräng Dance Camp at the time. It was a Swedish small event in Herräng. It was Herräng Dance Camp, but it was only Swedish people coming, so it was no international people. But our plan was to bring Al there. And then maybe in, I say, February or March 85, we understood that Al was seriously sick. And we didn't know exactly in the beginning what it meant, but we somehow got the information that he had cancer, some type of throat cancer, And we understood that he probably didn't get the best health care over there. He probably didn't have the insurances that you needed. So we started to investigate here if we possibly could bring him to Sweden for treatment. And my memory is, I might be wrong now, but I think we contacted a quite recognized hospital here, Sofiahemmet. And we asked, is it possible that you could at least look at the x-rays from a good friend of ours that lives in New York, and we believe he doesn't get good treatment. And my memory says that those x-rays were sent, but we were informed from the hospital that it's too late. Nothing can be done. And then we understood, okay, Al is going to pass. And that's what also happened in late April 1985. And we were, of course, devastated because he was our friend, but he was also our source for all the information. We didn't have the contacts or the full know-how of the others that were still in circulation in New York.
And Al hadn't made that introduction or talked to them, so you had more names, or it was...
He mentioned some of the other dancers from time to time, but it was never that we got them on paper with a phone number or something like that. So we heard about Frankie and so on, but I never understood at the time that I probably didn't understand exactly who Frankie was. And I didn't know if he was teaching, or maybe I didn't even know that he had been in Hälsa Poppin. And I definitely didn't know that he probably was the most important of the Lindy dancers back in the days, considering that he was Whitey's right hand, and he choreographed much of the routines, and he was trying to keep the kids together a little bit. I didn't have that know-how. So we were left a little bit in the air, hanging in the air after Al passed. So we just continued working from the old movies, because that was a good source for information if you just were patient enough. And towards the summer of 85, we were able to pick up one more couple that was seriously interested in this, and that was Eddie Jansson, Eva Lagerqvist. And the reason why we were looking for a third couple, that was that Swedish Swing Society had received a message from a man by the name of Al Vollmer, and he was the manager for Harlem Blues and Jazz Band, which was an American and New York band with elderly jazz musicians that had played at the Savoy and so on. They were playing in this band, and they were going to do a handful of concerts in Stockholm and in Sweden. And somehow Al had contacted Swedish Swing Society saying, would some of you like to dance to the band, doing a number or two? And there wasn't much enthusiasm among the most recognized competition dancers, but Anders and me heard about it. And since no one else seemed to be interested to give a positive answer, me and Anders said, we want to look into this. So I danced with Catherine, Anders danced with Lena, and we felt two, it's not enough. And then we had seen Eddie and Eva, and we just asked them, are you interested in this?
Were they part of Swedish Swing Society?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. So they competed too. They were a little bit younger than the rest of us, but they had started to compete a little bit. So we asked them, they were very positive, and that led to that we were 3 couples, and we said yes to perform with Harlem Blues and Jazz Band. So we did 3 performances at the Jazz Festival, at the nightclub here in Stockholm, and in Gävle at a place called Fontainebleau. We did 1 number. It was the Lindy number. That was all we had. We were not very good, but we did Jumpin' at the Woodside to the band.
Wow. Yeah. Vicious.
And after doing those 3 jobs, the 6 of us said, let's stay together and work with the Lindy Hop. So we formed this group. The name was not there at the time. It was a big discussion which name to use. But we formed a group, and we decided finally to call it the Rhythm Hotshots. And that was kind of the group that I worked within for 25 years. So it was not Swedish Swing Society any longer. We were still members, but the 6 of us, we worked on a totally different level and with a totally different ambition than the other people. And we were definitely not open to share our know-how. We were protective. We worked in that environment, and gradually we kind of drifted away from Swedish Swing Society. They were holding on to Al's material, but we were trying to hold on to the whole culture somehow, including other dance forms, the music, but also that we read books about what was Harlem culture like back in the days. So it was a bigger commitment and a more serious commitment.